lunch at Adam's house for lunch.
No, he brought. Oh, it's right there.
Tipped it over and they were all laughing and we're asleep.
Oh.
Yep.
Well, maybe that's not pretty close to it.
There
There
you
we
go.
go. Well, I need to subscribe to a better music service. Said I need to subscribe to a better music service. Or a music service at all, instead of just Apple Music.
Yeah,
Mari
comes with.
says she doesn't like your countdown because it shows her getting hit in the head.
Oh, does it really?
Yes.
I'm sorry.
What size is that TV, do you think?
Oh, yours? Probably,
The one we have are yours. 42.
40, that's what in the 40s. Maybe, yeah.
Oh. So hard to find. It's such a big book.
Netgear and the 5G is the one that just streams. Netgear 29-5G.
It used to be fitting.
Advanced.
Horrible. Now, if you're this tall, I wear it. But if you're this tall, I try to wear it.
Anywhere.
I'm closer than him to that.
Hi! I love you. I guess I like people.
What's that?
But I have 1 minute I'm trying to get in there.
What's he trying to do?
Oh, you're trying to transfer?
Yeah.
All right. Well, it is 10 o'clock. 10:01. Perfect. How's everybody doing today? Ah, shy is eating. I can't make her pray. Nice job. Well played, Shy. Well played.
My last half of the
He's
sentence
gonna-
for after.
See what he does, he'll wait till you take a bite and then be like, Shy, would you pray?
Hey, Shy. Exactly. Oh, we're glad you guys are here today.
We're missing our other crew.
We are. I hope they didn't get lost.
If I can find it, they can find it.
We should probably wait till the water stops.
Sorry.
No.
That's all good. Yeah. That's why we do this way. So
We'll do it live.
attention, everyone. So what do we got for announcements? Women's retreat's coming up,
Yes.
and you need to get your monies and your spot saved directly, so that
Yes. There's spots still open. There aren't very many, but there are spots still open. But yes, we need money ASAP.
And if you're really thinking about it, but you're not certain, please let us know, because we're gonna have to kind of finalize numbers to be able to buy the rest of the things. And we will make our determination on how many things we purchase based on how many seats are reserved. So we want to make sure there's enough for everybody.
right. So if you're thinking about going to women's retreat, you need to let them know this week.
September 20th through the 22nd.
Okay, September 20th through the 22nd. Awesome.
Accountability groups will be starting soon.
Roughly September.
Roughly September.
Yeah. So
It's almost September.
Yeah.
I know it's crazy, isn't it? It's the 25th.
I'm okay with that because I don't get paid till September.
There you go.
Joys of teaching.
Yeah.
It's the end of the month and I'm looking at my bank account going,
September come hither quickly. What else we got?
youth group tonight, 5:30 at the Republic Palms Community Center. So
Cool.
Don't forget, change the new time. I will be making an announcement this afternoon to remind everybody where we'll be at.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Wednesday night, our house. Thursday night in Willard. Sunday morning here. Sunday night, youth group. So,
Those people who are in young adult age, we have some guests and stuff here, but anyone else listening online, and our other young adults who aren't here, interested and want to do something like that, you don't count. You're old now. Yeah.
She's
still
in college.
Yeah. No, she doesn't count. She's old now.
They're on their way. They went to the wrong place.
No.
there you go.
Over there.
Our daughter.
This would be Lindsay who's telling me that our daughter's driving.
That makes sense. But yes, interested in starting something like that.
Everybody has to go surprise.
Right.
We'll be starting that up sometime. Whoever, we'll probably start off with like just get together, and if people want to do like a weekly meeting, we're welcome to bi-weekly. So shy now that you're back permanently.
Woohoo!
I keep forgetting that you're not leaving.
I know.
It's
So
so nice that
awesome.
you're here.
I'm excited.
You
I
too.
know, me too.
Hi, I'm Jenny.
This is
I'm
Jenny. So yeah, that's all I got.
Yeah, no, that's all I got. Great. That works. You want to pray?
I love to pray.
Awesome.
Oh, you mean out loud? Okay, yeah. I can
Well, you can pray quietly, and we'll just pray with you in spirit.
Well, I'll just sit here in silence for a bit. All right, if you're better, something we'll pray. God, I just thank you so much for today. I just thank you for this family that we have to get together and just enjoy each other's company. And God, that we can just come and be with you today. I pray that you will touch our hearts, God, you will touch our minds, you will change us, and that we can leave here just refreshed, renewed, and ready to go out and do your ministry. So God, right now as we're in this time of worship, pray that you will be lifted up, glorified, and just may all of the stuff that we do here just make you smile today. We pray these things in your name. Amen.
Bless the Lord, oh my soul, oh my soul, worship His holy name, sing like never before, oh my soul, worship Your holy name.
can sit down, you can run around, I don't know. You can, not you, Adam.
Everybody but I.
You call me out on the water, the great unknown, where feet may fail, and there I'll find you in the mysteries, in oceans deep, my faith will stand, and I will call upon your name, and keep my eyes above the waves. When oceans rise, my soul will rest in your embrace. For I am yours, you are mine. Grace abounds in deepest waters. Your sovereign hand will be my guide. Deep in fear surrounds me. All right. And I will call upon your name and keep my eyes above the waves. When oceans rise, my soul will rest in your embrace. For I am yours, you are mine. Spirit, lead me where my trust is without borders. Let me walk upon the waters, wherever you would call me. Take me deeper than my feet could ever wander, and my faith will be made stronger in the presence of my Savior. Spirit, lead me where my trust is without borders. Let me walk upon the waters, wherever you would call me. Take me deeper than my feet could ever wander, and my faith will be made stronger in the presence of my Savior. One more time. Spirit, lead me where my trust is without borders. Let me walk upon the waters, wherever you would call me. Take me deeper than my feet could ever wander, and my faith will be made stronger in the presence of my Savior. And I will call upon your name, keep my eyes above the waves. When oceans rise, my soul will rest in your embrace. For I am yours, you are mine. For I am yours, you are mine. Amen. Heavenly Father, we do want you to take us where we're unable to go on our own. We just pray that you would lead us there, Lord, that you would, as this song says, just set a fire in my soul. And just really come today, Lord, as we worship you and as we talk about you and as we learn from you, that you would just really set a fire in our soul and just, man, combining the two songs, take me where my feet can only go if you lead me. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. I'd rather be. No place I'd rather be. No place I'd rather be. Here in your love, here in your love. So set a fire down in my soul that I can't contain, that I can't control. I want more of you, God. I want more of you, God. Set a fire down in my soul that I can't contain, that I can't control. I want more of you, God. I want more of you, God. Set a fire down in my soul that I can't contain, that I can't control. I want more of you, God. I want more of you, God.
Amen. It is our kind of prayer today, or mine anyway, that He would just set a fire in my soul. Oh, so we are, we got a sermon series that we started last week. We were here called Googling God, and last week was just the intro. So, basically, it goes like this. Yeah, you're free to move around the country, by the way. Get yourself comfortable. Grab
Take us a second.
some more coffee, whatever.
Right, there's more coffee.
And Jeff,
Plenty of
Yeah.
coffee.
we probably need to remind people about the teaching team, what it is, and that
Yeah,
we're doing
okay.
today.
Great.
I forgot about that.
All right, so anyway, just a quick announcement that I forgot. Teaching team. We're having our first meeting today, so if you're still time to come, it'll be today at noon at our house. So if the teaching team is basically, if you're interested in teaching and being part of that process, whether it's speaking or whether it's helping put the stuff together or media or whatever, if you're interested in that kind of thing, we're having our first meeting today for the teaching team. So I don't know how much I need to go into that, but if you're interested, be there, or just let me know
Yeah.
if you can't be there today.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
don't want them to feel like they can't come
Right.
if they miss today.
No, you can join it anytime you want.
Closed.
Yeah. So
Tryouts today.
tryouts. Yeah. Bring a short 5-minute.
Show up.
Wait, the tryouts for RFamily Church are to be there. We usually just have a mirror, and if you breathe on it, you're good. Kind of like what we do at AutoZone. Yeah.
You might get voluntold.
But you don't have to be necessarily wanting to be a speaker, or you can just want to be a speaker. We're kind of putting our sermon series together. We're and with a group now, and so anyway, that's teaching team, and that will be today at noon. Or you can let me know, and we'll be having another meeting
And with food.
shortly. Oh yeah, there's food too. So
Oh, okay. In that case,
That's how you
then.
sell
Yeah,
it.
there we go.
Yeah.
We're all on teaching team.
So we're trying something new, and this will be my first Sunday of trying it. So if I fail miserably, it's a good thing we have a teaching team who's going to help me put all this stuff together. Because what we're trying to do is maybe kind of keep the speaking time to a concise time, and then I know, they laugh at me every time, and
Concisely as long as he wants it to be.
exactly.
That's okay.
And then have the discussion time afterwards, where normally I bring the discussion into the middle of it. We did that this last week. We kind of did it in the middle, and it was it worked, because what we're doing is we're taking this teaching time, and then this is being shared. We're cropping the video, and then this is being shared on Wednesday night and Thursday night at the other two locations. So anyway, so that's what we're attempting to do. Whether that works or not, we'll find out, because we're also used to just, I'm used to it.
Interrupting you?
Correct. Although my children aren't here this week. So, anyway.
I'll fill in for him.
Yeah.
I think the idea was, please don't.
I know. That's what he was saying.
It's all good, because I don't even know if I can operate that way. So without distractions, I'm not sure I can even keep a thought together. So anyway, we started a sermon series called Googling God, and basically what that is I was sitting around one day, and I had Google open or whatever, I had my computer open, And I was like, wouldn't it be really, really cool to, if God had a Google platform, and you could just literally in the comfort of your own home, late at night, early in the morning, whatever, you could just Google whatever question you had, and God would just answer it. Like the web pages would come up. You know, there'd only be one because it would be right. You know, you wouldn't have to like search through 27 pages. Probably wouldn't even be any ads. I don't know. What would? Okay.
You could,
What would be the ad?
What? Yeah. So somebody write that down. I don't have questions written down this week, so that's a good one. All right, so we'll write that one down. I also discovered that if I'm going to stop and like ask a question or something, I need to pause so that I can find it on the video later a lot easier and be able to clip. So anyway, my video editing skills are learning. I'm learning. So anyway, if you could just Google the question and the answer would pop up and you would know it was from God, wouldn't that be just like awesome? I just think that'd be the coolest thing. And I'm sure, man, can you imagine how quick you'd wear a computer out? Like, God, I wish I knew now, you know. But so what we're trying to accomplish here is we're asking you guys and gals for questions that you might have. Now you can write them on a piece of paper and leave them behind today, because I don't think we have the box, or maybe we do have the box. You know, everything's new this week, so you can. We have a bucket.
I have a color.
You can put it right in that in the bucket of many colors. Joseph's bucket over here. So you can drop them in there. You can email, text, however you want to do it to our family church or me personally. But if you want it anonymous, just drop it in the bucket, or even if you don't care if it's anonymous. But I've got several already. But if you have a question that you'd like to ask God, because what we're trying to do is we're trying to take some of the opinion out and actually go to the Bible and say, what does the Bible say about this? Now, you're always going to get some opinion because whoever's speaking is got to compile the information, right? And so, but trying to use and get real good biblical answers to hard questions that you would ask. Most people don't ask, how many feet was the ark? Well, that was pretty simple. It's right in the Bible. It tells how many cubits it is. So, anyway, so that's what we're doing with Googling God. And since we haven't had a teaching team meeting, I just got to come up with the first one. So it's probably, I figured it's probably a good one to start with, because it's a question that maybe you're not asking, or maybe you are asking, but probably someone you know is asking the question. And the question is there a God? Is God real? And because it doesn't matter the rest of it here. If you don't believe God is real, then what's the use of going to God for the answers? And so again, trying to keep this somewhat fairly concise. How do we come up with proof, or what is the proof that there is a God? And so I'm going to just kind of go through this here, maybe, and we'll figure it out. So I think I have 4 different things here I came up with. The first one is, if God is real, what is the proof? And the first one is nature itself. So God, literally, Genesis chapter 1, verses 1 through 5, and do you guys have your Bibles? If somebody wants to read that would be great. Read it nice and loud so that the video picks it up. It'd be even awesomer. But Genesis 1:1 should be hard to find.
Believe it or not, I actually have it sticky noted.
Do you really?
I do.
Awesome.
Which shouldn't be too hard to
Well,
believe.
she has every page of the Bible still.
Right. I was gonna say.
Accurate.
Right.
But how much does it before that? Because maybe one day I just didn't know where the beginning of the Bible was anymore.
There you go.
I mean, I have to go like 6 pages.
If somebody want to read that out loud, you can just jump in there. 1 through 5.
In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Now the earth was formless and empty. Darkness was over the surface of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the waters. And God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. God saw that the light was good, and he separated the light from the darkness. God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And there was evening, and there was morning, the first day.
Awesome, thank you. Now, obviously, it goes on to talk about the story of creation, but the fact of the matter is he created something out of nothing. Now you'll say, okay, because the question is, where did, if the Big Bang happened, where did that material come from? That's probably one of the biggest questions. And as I was reading through information this week, and again, this comes from other people, but as I was reading through information, it was amazing how many scientists who have spent an enormous amount of time trying to research the beginning of the Earth, or the beginning of our solar system, almost exclusively, if they were not in I don't know how to say this right, if they were not in an academic setting, if they were in a scientific setting, almost every one of them found God in creation when they went looking for it. And if you read scientific journals these days, it is amazing how many of the people writing the scientific articles are saying there has to be a God. And these are scientists who are studying the creation or the beginnings of life and the beginnings of our world. And so that just amazes me how God said, look, I'm going to, and you can say, well, where did God come from? Well, God is God. I don't have to go any further than that, because that's it. I mean, he's always been, he always will be. He's Alpha and Omega. And so, whereas we know that our planet has not always been, and we know that the rocks, trees, whatever, have not always been the way they are. God always has been. So anyway, first thing I'd say then is that he created something out of nothing, proof in nature. The second thing is that he reveals himself through nature. Somebody want to read Romans 1, what would that be, 18 through 20? Romans chapter 1. Again, Romans is right past the Gospels, not very far. Romans 1, 18 through 20.
Okay, I got that.
Okay, go for it, man.
But God shows his anger from heaven. Well, this is the verse 1. But God shows his anger from heaven against all sinfulness, wicked people who suppress the truth by their wickedness. They know the truth about God, because he's made it obvious to them. For since the world was created, people have seen the earth and sky. Through everything that God has made, they can clearly see his invisible qualities, his eternal power, and his divine nature. So they have no excuse for not knowing God.
There you go. See, so God even said himself, he said, look, I'm revealing myself to you through nature. Now here's the crazy part that I was thinking this week. I was like, oh, wait a minute. Most of the people I know who don't believe there is a God, or claim they don't believe in a God, what do they generally worship?
Nature.
Yeah. Most of my friends who claim to be atheists, or who are, the big thing is nature. And I think that's awesome that literally God puts that passion in their heart to point to him. He's like, I will show you who I am through nature. And I just think that's awesome that God reveals himself, and he says, I reveal myself through nature, through all that I've made and all that I've created, so that you don't have an excuse not to believe in me. Interesting, huh? All right. So the first proof is God real? 1, proof in nature. Okay. Ready for the second one? The second one is proof in moral values. So, is anybody here? Maybe you are a social science major, or maybe you spent serious time researching civilizations around the world. Okay. All right. Cool. So it's amazing how almost every civilization has some of the same moral values, no matter whether it's now there's some differences too, but whether it's Greece, or whether it's the Native Americans, or whether it's the Eskimos. I don't know, can you call them Native Alaskans?
It's Inuit.
Inuits. Okay, sorry. I don't. If I say something wrong, I apologize. I'm really not trying to. I just grew up in a different world than it is now, and so you still call it Indians, Native Americans, or Native Americans Indians, where now you call Indians people from India, I think.
Yes.
Okay. So anyway, it's a whole new world for me. So, so whether it's the people in India, or the people in sub-Saharan Africa, or the people in South America, typically, when you look at the rules, regulations, laws, and moral compass, they're fairly close to the same. Other than, there were times in history where things were, completely different. The Vikings really didn't have a problem with rape. They just, that's part of what you did. The Crusaders really didn't either. I mean, it was just a different group. But the people in the towns did, so,
It's amazing how that works.
amazing how that works. So, part of the proof that there is a God is this idea that there are moral values instilled in people from the very beginning. They didn't have to learn them. The first one is love. 1 John, I'll just read this one real quick. 1 John 4:7 says this: Dear friends, let us love one another, for love comes from God. Everyone who loves has been born of God and knows God. Where does love come from? God. Yeah. And so without God, there is no love. Now, is there love in the world? There's some hate too, but there is love, right? I mean, when I walked in and saw this little dog, what kind of dog is that anyway?
He's a miniature Yorkie.
Miniature Yorkie.
Mix, yeah.
He's like the cutest little dog, and if you haven't seen him yet, and so I mean, and he like gets up, but then you go to petting, he runs away. But maybe that's just me. I don't know. Maybe you know.
Let Adam pet him. I don't know.
Well, that makes sense. Adam's a lot nicer than I am. So, but I mean, you look at something like that, and you're just like, oh, that's awesome. You know that there's like, I won't go as far as love because it is a pet. I'm just joking.
I love him.
If you know me, I sometimes aren't the biggest pet lover, but I do like that dog. So when I leave, I'm taking him. Just joking, Jay.
Just because he's wearing a t-shirt.
Yeah, he's wearing a t-shirt
you
too.
Get close enough to take him.
He wouldn't. But because there's love, we know that there is a God because love comes from God. We talked about the values. We talked about love. Okay, those are two things. All right. So the third thing. What was the first thing? Nature. What was the second thing?
Love. Values.
Moral values. Yeah, love. Okay. The third thing. I love this. This does not come from me. This comes from someone else. I will give you the where it comes from. If you ask the proof in the Bible. All right. You ready? I love this statement here. It says, God has also revealed himself to us through the Word of God. Throughout Scripture, the exercise of God is treated as a self-evident fact. When Benjamin Franklin wrote his autobiography, he didn't waste time trying to prove his own existence. Likewise, God does not spend much time trying to prove his existence in his book. The life-changing nature of the Bible, its integrity, and the miracles which accompanied the writing should be enough to warrant a closer look. Here's so, Adam, you're a writer, and you're writing a book, or you wrote a book, or you wrote several books, or however that works. I guess you write one, you're a writer, right? Okay. When you started writing your book, what do you where do you start?
We came up just with the idea, so like the world building itself. And so my friends and I had this idea, and from that like idea concept of whatever we wanted, then like the characters start to come out, and then like the direction of like where the story is going kind of comes from that idea.
And when you're putting characters together, how much detail do you have to go into who your character is before you start writing a book about what he did?
It's kind of interesting. So you have the basic idea of the character, like you kind of know what they like, what they don't like, whatever. And then as you start writing the story, sometimes that character gets put into a new situation. You have to think, oh wow, well there's more to this character than I thought. I have to, on the spot, have to kind of come up with a backstory as to why would he react this way, why would she respond this way. And so you have this idea in your head, but the character continues to kind of evolve over time. The more that the book tells the story, the more the character gets even more in depth. And so, yeah.
And how hard is it to get people connected with the character?
Well, yeah, that's the challenging part. Because I mean, like, part of it is, but part of it isn't. I mean, like, if you write a really good character and you write someone who's compelling and very relatable, people tend to like that. That's why, I can talk about this in Corey's book. He had a character that was just so bland that he just kind of kicked him out eventually. And it was actually, oddly enough, when he first started writing his main character, but he just kind of kicked that one out. Because, like, as you start writing real experiences into the character, people automatically start to relate to them.
Right. So I love to read. Thank you for sharing that, because I'm making a point out of this eventually. Right. I love to read, right? But if you don't engage with the character right away, I'm just done with that book. I'll just move on. I mean, I may finish it, I may not. I don't care. I'll bail on it and read another book because I have plenty of books around. So here's what I find interesting. If the Bible was a work of fiction written by men just to try to control people, wouldn't there be a whole lot more about the character of God? Like him, like the physical attributes, all of those things that aren't in there. when I was going through this, I thought that is so true. I mean, Benjamin Franklin obviously didn't have to try to prove to you he was Benjamin Franklin to write his autobiography because he was there. God didn't spend a ton of time saying, I really am God and I'm really here. If it was all a big fake, there'd be a whole lot of that in there, I would think. So anyway, just interesting thought on that one, and we may look at that one again. So proof in the Bible, well, you know what? There's a whole bunch of stuff that God did, but very little on I'm really real. So keep that in mind. All right. So the last one here is the fact that God not only reveals himself through nature, revealed himself through moral values or values that people have, not only through his word, but also God sent his son, Jesus, and that more proof. All right, so fact number one, on the Sunday following his crucifixion, Jesus' tomb was discovered empty by a group of women followers. According to Jacob Kramer, an Austrian scholar who has specialized in study of the resurrection, by far the most scholars hold firmly to the reliability of the biblical statements about the empty tomb. And again, I stole that from someone else, but if the scholars around the world in major universities who have done a major amount of study on the resurrection, which is where Jesus came out of the grave, rose from the dead, all agree that they can't find any historical, biblical mess ups, anything to prove that Jesus didn't rise from the grave. And in fact, all of them say he had to because there is little physical written proof, not only from the Bible, but from other writings, other people who were living in Jerusalem at the time. Kind of awesome fact. Sorry, I was reading what I had written down here. You're all going, what's he doing?
This is that pause that you said you needed?
Well, no, I did need the pause because not only did he come out of the grave, but Christianity itself literally just exploded within the first few years. Now, if it was fake, and Jesus wasn't really, and the resurrection was all fake, there's no way it would have done that, because it would have been very hard to convince people that it was real. And so God sent Jesus, his son, who if you read the New Testament, and we're not going to read the whole thing this morning, or if you read all the red letters, and if you have the old King James Bible with the red letters, you can literally see who God is through how Jesus interacted with people. And so, anyway, I won't, like I said, we're not going to read all four of the Gospels this morning to pick out the proof on who God is and whether or not he was real. But you can read the miracles, you can read the way he interacted with people and that kind of thing, and see who God is and that he's real. So, again, I'm trying to keep it somewhat concise and then bring up discussion afterwards. And so, just this idea of is God real and is there proof? And so we're going to leave it at that, and then we'll jump on into some discussion. So I'm going to stop right there. All right. Okay, now. All right. Yes.
Well, kind of going on the, Christianity exploded and everything. It was also one of the reasons, especially in Greece and stuff, their concept of afterlife was very morbid. Very rare that you even got to, the good place or anything like that. Here's this religion coming in that's saying, just follow the God and believe and accept him, and then you're going to this wonderful place after. And that was like kind of the first time, at least I haven't studied all the religions obviously, but now it's changing to there's something positive to look for instead of death is this horrible end and you might as well just suffer your life because it's not going to get any better.
Greek, what you had to pay, you had to have enough money to go to heaven, even if they didn't.
Yeah, you paid the boatman to get you across. Yeah. Otherwise you were stuck in hell or whatever. I mean, that's kind of the way the Catholic Church was for a while there too. No.
Yeah, didn't they put like coins on their eyes when they died?
Mhm.
Yeah.
That's where that started.
Yeah.
Yeah, like the pennies that, so that they could pay the ferryman.
Mhm.
So if God had a Google service, what would the ads be?
And be like, one of them would probably be like, set this timer so you could actually pray a couple times a day.
Oh, prayer apps. Yeah.
Yeah, prayer app.
Bibles on sale.
Free Bibles.
Directions to church.
Yeah. There you
Find
go.
your local church.
Oh, suggested for your previous, here's a suggested place where you might fit in based on your personality type.
Based on your Google searches.
I don't know,
This
I
is
think
the
he'd
church
call it
that
Google, I
you-
think
And
he'd call it
honestly,
a
Be a whole bunch of
Maybe
people
it
would
could
be
be
in
an app for like, people you can help with your experiences, like,
Oh, yeah.
So it'd almost be like
We saw that you
God
were
friended
searching.
me.
yeah.
There's
Right.
a show called God Friended Me, and God puts out friend suggestions that need this person's help.
Yeah.
I think it'd be called Agape, loves, God's love chat.
There you go. Yeah.
I
Yep.
think there'd be I was just thinking something like a Tinder account or something to match you to a church or to a small group or
Oh,
something.
there you go.
So here's a question, and we have a lot of friends who watch some of this or all of this, go to other churches around the world, or at least around the country. Would God recommend your church?
Yeah.
Would you come up in
Would
this
you come
search?
up in the
Oh.
search menu? Yeah.
Ooh.
And if not, why?
Yeah.
Would you be a good fit for?
Yeah, I
Well,
mean,
not even that, but would
would God
God
Right, would
Would
that
you
guy
recommend-
promote your
Right.
church?
Would he recommend your church?
over the other 37 here in town?
I don't
No.
know, if you could set up the algorithms right.
Wait now. God's setting those algorithms
Right.
here. We're really doing this.
And the nice part is we do something so completely different that,
Yeah.
but
There'd be a button to push that automatically gives you the 2x4.
But I'm feeling
Yeah, sure. Why not? You're being stupid. Hit this button.
yeah, the search would just be now do it, now do it, now do it, now do it, now do it.
Opportunities to serve. These are good matches for you know, here's some things that I see you needing to help with.
Here's how you can use your
Yeah.
gifts.
Yeah.
That'd be cool.
Mm-hmm.
There should be a spot where, like the garden path, where you're here and you have two choices, and there's something that says, yeah, you should go this one over this one.
Be like Google Maps.
Yo, yeah.
No, it's
Life,
like a
spiritual.
questing, it's a questing app. For those gamers.
Video game, yeah.
Yeah, like Dungeons and Dragons, only, you know,
Unfortunately, he's still
God
only
and
going to
house.
show you 2 steps ahead.
that's right.
Yeah, it'd be more like Dungeons and Dragons for him. He's stuff.
See, he doesn't exactly tell you what to do, he just kind of tells you what not to do.
Sometimes.
Depends.
He'd be like, do you really think that's an okay thing? I'll just let you decide, but no, just
It's
put
really
that out
confusing.
there.
It's really confusing sometimes when God's like, actually, this is where you get to make the choice. God bless you either way. And you're like, I just want to be told what to do.
Question mark.
Not impressed with that answer.
It obvious.
Yeah. Daryl and I were talking today, and he was talking about something that they'd been praying about, you know, and he's like, and God didn't say no, so.
That's not like that.
So like, yeah, all right, I like that.
I guess that's a yes.
I guess that's a yes. That's why I used to try to convince my parents. But she didn't say no. That doesn't mean yes, by the way.
And it was kind of cool to have Daryl.
Yeah. So, what do you think about the whole God revealing Himself through nature?
This is the discussion part of it.
Oh,
Yeah, we're in the discussion part.
Okay.
Sorry. That's why I paused. And went,
There was a pause.
there was a pause. I paused.
Well, I mean, the one that was the most revealing to me, and one of the reasons I'm so fascinated with butterflies, is the fact that a caterpillar, whether it spins a cocoon or creates a chrysalis, you know, the body, I mean, you know, when you're a kid, you just, you know, makes a cocoon and then it becomes a butterfly. But in that process, when that creature is inside that hidden shell, it completely liquefies. And the atoms and molecules of its existence are completely and totally rearranged to become that moth or butterfly. And there is no way that that is not created. That's not something that could be, what's the word I want?
The Big Bang?
Yeah, but,
An accident.
well, but what's the term? The other, Darwinism, evolve, yeah, that can't be evolution.
Yeah.
That can't be evolution.
Yeah.
Evolution of the
Look at
species.
the balances.
There's a difference between microevolution
Yes,
and
yes,
Yes.
macroevolution.
Yeah,
And
evolution of the
we're
species is
we're
different
using,
than-
yeah, we're using the
Macro.
macro.
Absolutely. So
Absolutely.
I think
You're all
that
monkey.
that's something that like microevolution is a tool, macroevolution is a myth. And there's I think that big difference that people don't see. So I just wanted to say that.
Oh, yeah, no, yeah. I was
totally-
just getting ready to make the same statement.
Yeah, we totally believe in microevolution, not
Actually, I was thinking
macroevolution.
on that.
Right. Well, because it's hilarious because, you know, years ago, it was like anytime anybody used the word evolution, the church just went nuts on it. You could be speaking of micro or macro, you know, but the word evolution was like, but it uses the word evolution in it. Well, man, there is evolution. I mean, we're not as hairy as we used to be, and we're taller than we used to be, and, you know, it's just, yeah.
Well, the ecosystem in whole, you think of the complexity of the human body and the complexity of each animal and how they're so different, and but there's similarities at the same time. So it's like that can't just be an accident, you know. It's like, you know, I wonder about skunks, but other than that, or porcupines.
I'm curious what your thoughts are, but while I was doing some of this research this week, it was just amazing to me the disconnect between academia and professional science. Does that make sense? Is that am I putting that right? Because they're real scientists who work at colleges, but
But where their focus is,
Yeah.
whether it's academic or, yeah.
whether they're working for NASA or whether they're working for an institution.
Right. That's one thing that I've had whenever I was in college and I've had these really long discussions late at night with other people there, and they would talk about how, you know, faith and all of this kind of stuff, and I tried to point out to them that when you reach a certain point in your theory, like you have to think about it, like throughout history, it was very logical and very reasonable at one time in history to believe that the world was flat.
Sure.
Based on observation, based on what we knew of the world. Like, you're standing there, you see the sun come up and go across the sky. Like, the world was flat and it was like a dome. Like, and that, it made logical sense, like, based on the observations that we had. And then it became logical for us to be the center of the world because, like, things are clearly going around us. So, you know, it's just one of those, it doesn't make sense for me to think, oh, I'm spinning and going around something else. So, like, as our knowledge grows, we end up learning more. You know what I mean? We end up learning and changing more about how our world is viewed. But, like, at one time, we look at that and it's like, well, that's just stupid. It's like, no, it's not, you know? And I think even today, like, science can only take us so far, and there comes a point where you have to take that next logical step, and that part is faith. And that's what I try to help people understand, is that science can only take you to a certain point, and then it becomes religion.
Yeah.
The theory of evolution, the theory of the Big Bang Theory, that's still a theory. Like, we call it a theory, but it's faith. Like, you have no proof to show that, because the same evidence can be taken one of two different ways depending on your paradigm. Where is your brain coming from? And so that's one thing that I have a lot of arguments with a lot of people about, was like, I use the fish analogy. I'm standing on top of a mountain and I looked down and I'm like, oh my gosh, there's a fish fossil there. Depending on where my thoughts were before, that is evidence one way or another. Hey, look, there's evidence that the world was once flooded over. You know, this is evidence of the flood. Or, hey, this is evidence then that, you know, plate tectonics was an actual thing and this used to be an ocean floor. It's evidence one way or the other, it's just depending on where you're coming from.
Sure.
There. And so, and I'm not discounting plate tectonics, I know it's a real thing. But I'm saying, like, you know,
I'm like, wow.
no, I'm just
no.
saying, like, it's just one of those, that's just a piece of evidence you can use one of those.
You gotta believe in something.
Right. But there comes a point where your faith is, like, science can't take you all the way to have all of the answers for everything.
Sure. Because for it to be a fact, it has to, Joe, one,
Be observable,
and two,
be reproducible.
there you go. And they can't do that with creation. So you have to believe one way or the other. So my wife has used that so much, I even know that. But I not against me. I mean, she taught science in middle school. So, you know, you get to learn some of these things that
Well,
I missed
it
in
helped that I
science.
was teaching science in middle school in a Christian school.
Yeah.
So I got,
Yeah.
To make sure that it got accurately taught.
yes.
So how do we use science and nature? How do we work with God, I guess you might say, to help people find Him?
You read my senior research paper.
There you go.
We are kind of preaching your series.
Yeah, we should have had you do this one. Are you on? Oh, maybe you should have been on the teaching team.
Coming over.
Still can.
I'm coming up.
I told her she had to come.
Oh, she gets to.
Oh, well, there you go.
She gets to, cause just that.
Because you'll make it.
She'll say,
Something.
There's something I'm gonna feed you.
Yeah, you gotta be careful around here. Because they'll sign you. How do we do that? Since you've already done the research, what are some good ways, practical something that we can take and go here?
Are you asking how to present God to other people through science, or what are you asking?
Yeah, that's a great question. What I'm asking is, how do we work with God to reveal Him to other people through science and nature?
Okay, so what I typically tried to do throughout that whole presentation and throughout that whole time period, because everybody was looking at me like I was dumb and like, why would you do that? That's, first of all, a hard research topic. Second of all, an impossible research topic to come out with an outcome. So my outcome was, instead of proving God, I was proving that there was a possibility of God. So, what's that?
Like there was some kind of form of intervention.
I mean, not even that, because you can't even prove that, but proving that he's a possibility. Proving that, like you were saying earlier, that it wasn't yours, but you kind of reached it. That there's no, I just lost my thought. Proving that there is something there that's warranted a closer look. So there's, you can't prove that, but you can prove that there's a possibility of a closer look and a reason to research, and that's more what my
Like there are a lot of big word that I can't even think of right now. Incidences. There we go. That like happen in nature that scientists are just like, we can't figure it out yet. Like we have absolutely no explanation for this. Like, but it's a great thing to like come out of. And it's just like, well, if you can't like explain it, maybe there's like, you know, some other reason that you're just like trying to like forget here. Like.
And off of that too, Michelle, is like the more questions we get answered, the more questions we get. Like, we sit there and like, oh my gosh, what is this, you know, what are our bodies made of? Organs. What are those organs made of? Oh, we got some tissues. Oh, what are those cells? Oh my gosh, there's more inside the cell. Oh wow, there are these molecules. Now they're atoms. We just keep zooming in and there's more. Like, we
what's
figure it out
next?
and we're like, oh, now there's more questions that we don't.
Let's say like, we don't have to have answer to those questions. He does.
Right. And I think the search for our more questions, we end up getting, the search to answer our questions, we end up getting more questions, and some of them don't make sense.
Right.
Like, my mom likes to use this one before because she teaches chemistry, but like molecules, yeah, everyone knows with positive and negative charge, and even though this is not quite the same for molecules, go with me here. Protons have like a positive charge, and then electrons have a negative charge. And we all know like with magnets, they tend to attract, but like in an atom, they're like all over the place, like, and there's actually a lot of space between them. And I know it's different on molecular levels, I know, but they call that like the strong molecular force and the weak molecular force are like in there, and they call it that because they don't know why it does that, but that's what it does, so we're gonna call it a name.
Exactly.
They strap a name on it because it doesn't really make sense, but it's repeatable and provable, so they call it something, you know. And I just think that's really funny. It's like, well, we don't really know what it is, but we see it, so we're gonna label it that.
Right.
So.
But I found that the more that I try to answer somebody's question with a God answer, the less likely that they are to believe it.
Mm-hmm.
So I tend to just answer it with a bigger scientific question, and kind of leave them that space to research on their own.
Cool. Thank you.
I don't know if that answers that question.
Yeah, actually does. And that is the problem sometimes in the church world, is we get kind of tied up in our own, what's a good word? Our own bubble.
Faith and our belief that we're
Yeah.
so quick to say, look, you have to think it this way.
Right. As opposed to, you know.
We know what we want the answer to be, so we look at it to prove that.
Right.
Instead of saying, well, here's some research you could do to come to your own conclusion on that topic.
Right.
Like
Or,
what Shai was saying.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
Here's
like, I
some-
know that I make a lot of jokes about like the sticky notes and everything like that, but that all started because people were asking me questions, and so I would find it in the Bible, sticky note it, and then present it to that person so that they could read it, rather than me telling them, hey, this is what I found, and this and this and this, and that way my interpretation is the one that's going around. I sticky note what I found, give it to them, they can read it, and then there were a lot of questions, so it just exploded.
sure.
But I don't know, just in that sense, giving that power over to them to figure it out on their own and see it in the way that God wants them to see it, rather than the way that I see it. I think that that's an easier way to go, and it's shown more success in my experience.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and I love the way Paul also, when he was when he was with the dude who was staring at the statue of the unknown God. When he's in Athens, I think he was. And he's like, hey, I noticed that you're looking at this statue. Can I tell you about the unknown God that you're not familiar with? And he just kind of used that and went with it. And I think we can do the same thing in either science or nature. We've got to spend a lot of time out in nature this summer, which was phenomenal. And I didn't see a lot of people, so because I was in wilderness areas mostly, except for the campground. But there probably should be a point to that.
Well, your point was going to be that, you know.
I did not see anyone just standing there looking at a tree trying to figure out what it was. So had I'm trying to think of how I would take that and point them towards God. Just somebody staring randomly out
Well,
at a tree.
maybe not like specifically them, oh, what is this tree? But at least like when we go on our walks, I've been to Cathedral Green like a million times, but still every time I go, I stop and I see like this, just the way the light hits the tree leaves, the way the, you know, sun, or I mean the clouds are and everything. I stop and take a picture, and I have like hundreds of photos on my picture of this same part, because every time I go, I'm just like wowed away with nature, and it's like, why is it like that? It's God made it.
Right.
I found that, like, maybe not within nature as in like nature, but something that I use a lot is, so ATP synthase is an enzyme that spins inside the body, and if it didn't spin, then we wouldn't be able to produce enough energy to, you know, breathe. So without this spinning enzyme, with the force that's caused by a current of electrons, that's all microscopic, that didn't work, we couldn't live, and that's for pretty much any living thing. So experiencing something like that, and just that small of a component that nobody really thinks about, and presenting that question, presenting that awe to somebody that's looking at the human body, and it's a lot easier in my field because I study that. But so people are just staring and looking at a tree
Right.
and wondering what it is.
Sure.
So that kind of concept of presenting that question and presenting that awe to allow somebody to have that curiosity for God.
Right. The same thing is true. My mom had that same awe whenever she was studying chemistry.
Mhm.
And water molecule is H2O. It's called a bent molecule because you have like the oxygen and the two hydrogens look like Mickey Mouse ears off of it. And that the fact that it's bent that way is the whole reason why there's life.
Mhm.
If it were straight, if it were like oxygen and two little balls on the outside,
Mhm.
everything would be gas, there would be no life on the planet. But the very fact that it's bent that way is what causes all life to exist. And my mom, when she saw that, she was kind of like, how can you not look at that? show that it's like creation. So, you know, from the tree down to the smallest molecule, like it just, yeah, it's just kind of amazing. So,
Team.
Sorry. That's just Facebook letting me know that Deer River Church is live now. Great.
Deer River is
Deer
one
River.
of our offshoots.
Yeah, it's kind of one of our offshoots in Minnesota. Chuck and Kathy Davis kind of started. They came on some set. They were pastoring in not Joplin, but north of Joplin, on the little Carthage, and kind of really liked what they saw on our Saturday night because they would come over on Saturday night, and they ended up doing the same thing in Minnesota after they moved up there. So, but they have like a real building and just put sidewalks in yesterday. So.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it's crazy. Never know what you'll find. So we're either all, leave you with this thought, we're either all worshiping the Creator or the tree. We're either worshiping the Creator or we're worshiping the created. And so as we go through our life this week, I guess I would encourage us all to maybe take a look at where the majority of our time and energy is. And is that on the created or is that on the creator? And anyway, that's my thought to leave you with today. Anything else?
Yeah, you know, we really focused on the first point, and I don't know if that was by design or if that was just because that's where everybody's brain was in the discussion. But it really smacked me upside the head, point 3,
Okay.
where Christianity, at the time, there wasn't Christianity until Christ rose from the grave. And it never really occurred to me that they're so close to that point in time, and there's no reason that Christianity would have burst and just become this movement if there hadn't been a resurrection.
The witnessing
Right, I mean, so that was like a very much for me this morning, like, holy crap, really? Yeah. Okay, I get that. I mean, it really hit me. And so that was,
That's a good point.
to me, that was really the first time I thought of it that way. So I just wanted to say that.
No, that's great. Yeah, that's a good reminder because my big one was that I think God didn't really try to prove himself.
Yeah, that was me too. Yeah.
I was like, I never thought about that. You know, when I read a book and they spend, the first 6 chapters are all, trying to make me connect with this character and believe it could be a real person or a real character. And God's like, I'm God. I created the world. Deal with it.
I am that I am.
Yeah.
Biography, what you do is you introduce yourself.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, heck, I even do that in my journal. Like, I introduce myself and I talk about kind of who I am and what I like, and that's exactly what he did at the beginning of his book. This is who I am and what I did and what I like. It even says, and God saw that it was good. So,
Right.
it is an autobiography, and while it wasn't technically written by him, it was inspired by him, written by man. It's still his book and his biography.
Yeah.
But he didn't feel the need to give a tons of backstory.
He didn't.
So that we believe, so that
And
that's the whole thing is.
right, and I think some people have a problem with that. Like the other debate I have with people is like, well, because they talk about, in my philosophy classes, we have to go through all the philosophers. But one of the universal things is first cause. Like, you keep going back in time, and one of the easiest things, you go back to the Big Bang, it's like, well, what caused the Big Bang? Well, it's the first cause. Like, there had to have been something to spark it. And that's what I think a lot of people have. It's like, okay, in that case then, what caused God? And it's like, well, that's outside of our knowledge realm. I mean, like, God is infinite. He created us, and we're confined to this kind of box that we call time. And he exists way outside of it, so we can begin
No, I put it, if he's a God that you can figure everything else out about, he's not really worthy of worshiping.
Right.
If it's just, you can put it in this neat little box and figure it all out, then how is that worth?
Right.
I mean, it's outside of your, just,
Yeah.
our minds can't comprehend,
Right, we
never having a
can't.
beginning.
Right, and that's the thing. I think some
Yeah,
people are
so
like, well, where did God
that's
come from? It's like, we can't understand it. Like, they're like, well, that's a cop out. Like, no, it's really not a cop out. Like, can't understand it, like, as much as we try.
Based off of, like, okay, so the assumption that the Big Bang was caused by God can also be found in, like, this dream, right? Of, you know, a big flash and dragons and all this stuff, and that's what we have. We have that dream, and that's what we interpret now. It just doesn't seem as ridiculous to us because we're currently living it. But, you know, who's to say that in the future that they're not going to look at what we look at now as completely insane and ridiculous?
Right.
Because how could we not understand what came before God and all this stuff? How could we not understand what God has clearly put in front of them? So it's just, I don't know, things like that we don't have the knowledge because he hasn't given it to us yet. And if he ever will.
Any minute, yeah.
Right. And I've just kind of accepted that. Like, I know
Right.
nothing and I'm cool with it. So
Yeah, I mean, I don't have to explain God. God can explain himself.
Well,
It's
y'all did.
it's the logical fallacy of, like, can God create a rock so big that he can't lift it?
Right.
Well, you can't ask that question because it's a circular logic. Like, can God? It's setting God up for failure. He can't win either way, so you
Right.
can't ask that question.
I mean, you can ask the question.
You can. It's
Literally,
just not,
you can ask.
You're setting the question up for failure, so that's not a very fair
Right.
question to ask. So.
Which is probably not one of the topics that we're going to use.
Right. Well, because it's not a good question.
It's really not.
I mean, someone explained it to me as like little kids, like tiny little ones that are asking their parents, like maybe their pregnant mom, like, where do babies come from? And there's no possible way that you can explain that to a child that young. And so they're like, you'll understand when you're older. Or they give some form of other answer, whether it be a lie or just kind of a very vague truth. But whenever we ask questions that complex to God, and he'll either say you'll understand when you're older, or he'll give us a vague truth and we just don't understand it yet, and maybe we will eventually, but currently we're just too small.
There you go. I like that.
Good.
I like that. Cool. Well, I don't know what next week is yet. What the question is?
We'll figure that out at lunch.
Partially
Where
because
do babies come from?
partially because you haven't put them in the bucket yet.
Where do babies come
Where do babies come from? Well, the mommy and the daddy.
Love each other very much.
Yeah.
They call the story.
Anyway, we're gonna move right along from that before I say way the wrong thing. Yeah.
Googling God.
Googling God. So next week, I'm not sure what we're gonna be doing, but we will be here. So now you've all found it, and so you can find it again, and and you can bring someone with you if you want. That'd be great too.
Yeah.
So we still got plenty of room.
And there's more chairs.
I
And
didn't
more
have more
chairs.
chairs, I just didn't bring that.
And there's lots of tea.
Lots of tea,
Lots
and
of
coffee,
And coffee.
Yeah, there's
water
coffee
if you
too.
want. Bring your own drink if you want.
Yeah.
And there are snacks.
And there's even like a chair that has a massager in it, and you don't even have to pay for the one at the mall. You can just come over here on Sunday morning. Because really, no one's sitting in it. So
Actually, well, next week. Yeah, you know, we might
Don't
just
be a
come
line.
and sit over
Might
there.
be fighting over being able to do that.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
yeah, if you're interested in
a sign up sheet for the
Meditation, yeah.
if you're interested in worship team, it's 9:00 Sunday mornings. We meet most of the time and practice, or we try to, but today we had some problems and technical difficulties, so we didn't get a lot of practice in, as you can tell. So anyway, 9:00 Sunday mornings.
Challenges and opportunities.
Challenges and opportunities. We have plenty. So, well, who wants to pray?
keep looking at me.
Well, I'm looking at you, so I don't look at Shy.
She doesn't have her mouth open.
I know she doesn't have any food, and I just really want to say it, but I'm not going to.
Of course I prayed last week. I'll pray.
Okay.
Of course.
She has to pray again.
Done all the
We have
time.
to pray all the time.
2 weeks in a row.
Oh, Lord, we just thank you for this time that you've blessed us with. Time to focus on you and really just dig deeper into who you are and the answers that you have given us. We just ask that you guide us this week to really remember to reach out and to do so in a loving manner to those around us, and really just help them to see you as we do, but through your eyes. We thank you again, and we ask all these things in your Son, Christ Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. All right. Well, thanks for being here. Thanks for opening your home to us. This was awesome. This is great. This is way more comfortable bench than theirs.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Oh, good.
And it doesn't squeak either.
No, it doesn't squeeze.